Hello and welcome to the next installment of Cylinder Radio. My guest today is active duty military in the United States Air Force, owner of Skips Tactical Solutions, a firearms training and accessories company, and she is an African-American woman. This is Avery Skipalis. Did I say that right?
Skipalis.
Skipalis.
Oh, you're fine.
Okay. Avery, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So today, I think that you would be a good person to talk to about guns. And this podcast is where we take controversial issues and we look at all perspectives to try and get a deeper understanding of things, because how can we solve problems if we don't know what a problem really is?
Absolutely.
So you might be the person to talk to when we talk about guns. What do you think?
I think so.
Yeah. So can you tell me, because we're just meeting, and my audience a little bit about yourself, your history, and what you do?
Okay, so I am a firearms instructor. I am still currently serving in the military, and in the military, I'm actually a firearms instructor. So that's my daily job. And in February 2018, I felt a need to start a training business, and I wanted to share my skill with the civilian community. And we've had a lot of school shootings, those things. When Parkland happened, it was just a little too close to home. I do live here in Florida, and I do have 2 young children. So I felt that I needed to get out into the community and educate them on firearms and being safe with firearms. I've been an instructor for 10 years, and I am well-versed in the different manufacturers. I am a Glock Advanced Armor. I'm a Glock Armor. I've been to SIG, FN, and I try to make sure that I get out and just stay abreast of the different things that are going on in the community and just be well-versed in the different manufacturers.
Yeah. So the reason why I wanted you specifically, Avery, to be on this, and I said this in the intro, is because you're a Black woman. That matters. I think because it kind of might break stereotypes about what people think when they think of like a firearms instructor or like quote unquote gun people. They might not think of someone like you.
And that's another reason why I wanted to start my business, because, in the military, you don't really see color. It's just your battle buddy, the person that you're going to have their back. And although it's not really the norm to have a female firearms instructor, but in the military, it's not so, this mysterious type thing. But in the civilian community, the normal firearms instructor that a lot of people see is a white male. And I'm not saying that's the only one, but there's a lot of white males that are out there. And so I wanted to show my face and show my skills, because I felt like there's a lot of people who can relate to me. Not only am I a minority, but I'm also a mother, and I'm just a woman.
Yeah, I mean, I see that. I have a bunch of friends who are military, retired, and active duty, and it's like, if you can do your job, I don't care what you are. I don't care anything. You're like, if you have skills, then we want you. We like you. And I think I think society could learn a lot from that. I think that, like, if you're good at whatever it is, you're good at being a surgeon, you're good at being a lawyer, you're good at being a plumber. I don't care. I don't care what color your skin is. I don't care what gender you are. I don't care how you identify. Can you do a job well? Cool. That's something that I don't think we do nearly enough in society. We look at those things, we focus on those things, and not what are you good at? But that's a whole different conversation, I suppose. So I guess, like, where is the confusion that you see about, like, where is the cylinder? Like the anti-gun, the people that are especially calling for more gun legislation and trying to put blocks as far as concealed carry permits and things like that. Just the idea that guns are scary, guns are dangerous, guns are the cause of these school shootings. The signs that you might see that say, people care more about their guns than they do children, things along those lines. Like, where do you see, I know you're not like a psychologist, but like, where do you see kind of the myths here that people don't understand? And can you bring them into like your perspective a little bit? Because it's all about perspectives.
Yes. So I want to talk about what you just said when you said, people care more about guns than they do kids. I can still carry for my kids. Mm-hmm. And that means that I care about my kids. And it's the perspective of if we're somewhere and we're out in public and there's someone that is bad that wants to do me harm or my children harm, I want to be the first line of defense. I want to be the one who can protect not only myself, my children, or the people that are around me. I don't want to have to call 911. When you're calling 911, you're being reactive. Something has happened, now you're calling 911. I want to be proactive, and I want to be able to see that maybe this just isn't right, and maybe I need to be on alert. And once I'm on alert, if I need to get my gun, then I need to get my gun. Or if I need to leave the situation, I'll leave the situation. But I care about my kids, and I want to be able to protect them. And as a mother, that was the reason why I started to carry, is because if something ever happened to my children and I couldn't defend them, I wouldn't be able to live with myself.
Yeah, I mean, it's the great equalizer, essentially.
Absolutely.
And I think that, in the Constitution, I teach the Constitution. I'm a government teacher. And, it is a God-given right. It is a divine right, let's say, that you can protect yourself. Animals protect themselves, and we're animals. But there's a difference between, someone who is, 5 feet tall and 97 pounds. And if they want to try and protect themselves against someone who looks like The Rock, like, you're in trouble. How are you going to do that? Now it becomes, the strongest physically can just dominate people, but you still have a right to protect yourself. And if that 95-pound person has a gun, it doesn't matter how many deadlifts you do. It equalizes the playing field. And I think that's sometimes hard for people to understand, but there is something to the idea that you could be attacked. So how do you protect yourself? And not everyone can protect themselves with Krav Maga classes or something like that, or because they do a lot of deadlifts.
Absolutely.
Also, you mentioned calling 911. I was in Wyoming a couple of years ago, and I was talking to someone there, and they said, a lot of people out here, we have guns because it might take an hour to get to us if you're a police officer, the nearest police station, or the old Public Enemy song about 911's a joke in my neighborhood. Like, there are neighborhoods where you call 911 and no one shows up. And there's other neighborhoods where you call 911 and someone's there in 3 minutes. That's a big difference. If someone's breaking into your house and you have a family in there or something, like, what are you supposed to do if you call the police and they say we'll be there in an hour? Like, that's a really tough situation. That if you're used to very quick response times, then you might have a very different outlook on the idea of what policemen, officers' roles should be in protecting you.
And, bullets travel very fast. Yeah. And if someone is breaking into your home, I like to think that they have malicious intent. And if they have malicious intent, you may not have time to get to your phone to call 911, but I want to be able to protect myself and my family, because those seconds, they count. And I looked up the average response time in the U.S. a couple months ago, and it was 20 minutes.
Yeah.
When they respond in 20 minutes, you can possibly be a victim. Or, they respond and you're not even alive to tell your side of the story.
So, Avery, how do you respond to the idea that, and it makes sense, that more guns equal more gun deaths? That if you have, guns in the house, there are statistics about having guns in the house. And if you have guns in the house, then it's more likely that you'll shoot someone in your family, or your kids could get into it and things like that. Because that's, a common perception and a common perspective that people take when it comes to firearms. So how do you, view that?
Those are real issues. They are. And my job is to educate people on being responsible gun owners. And we do have people that are very uneducated. And when you're uneducated, you just don't know what you don't know. But when you sign on to be a gun owner and you purchase your first firearm, there's responsibilities that come with that. And you have to keep your firearm secured from not only kids, but other unauthorized individuals. And if you don't do that, you can be held responsible, and you should be held responsible. So these children that are taking guns to school and, they're killing people, or, it's actually getting caught before something bad happens, the parents are responsible for that. And there are domestic violence issues. And I think that's why there's Lautenberg, there's, if you have any domestic violence charges, then you're not going to be able to have the firearm. But these are things that we really need to get smart on, and we can really help police ourselves better.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I also want to address is like first of all, there's a lot of guns. So, if we could go back to the 1780s and say, like, hey, let's clear up this Second Amendment. Let's figure out, because this is going to become a big thing. That's one thing, but we don't have a time machine. I looked it up. There's something like 390 million guns and 340 million people in America. I mean, it's like getting pee from the ocean. So these people that are calling for, we need to get rid of guns, there are more guns than people. It doesn't work like that. And are all of those 390 million guns in the right hands? No. Are they all like given to responsible people? No. And then you can apply that to everything. People keep butcher knives just out on the counter. People leave open outlets for their kids. Like, there's just a lot of misbehavior. And it makes sense then why you're doing what you're doing, which is educating. You can't just give people a gun but you can. People just go get a gun very easily. So the importance here is education. I'm an educator. You're an educator, very different kind of realms, but it's still the same idea here of trying to be responsible and trying to do something good. And you need to teach people guns are powerful, how to control this thing and keep it safely.
But I also think as a gun owner, there comes a level of maturity where you need to get trained. And I tell people, if you take my concealed carry class, this is the first step of your journey. You need to continue to train, and this needs to be something that you build into your routine because, this is very serious. Guns are very powerful, and you need to know when you should be able to use it and when you legally cannot use it.
Yeah. I think about that a lot. I like a martial artist. I do jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai and stuff like that. And people sometimes take like a weekend self-defense course and like, now I'll be ready. It's like, no, this is a blade you need to sharpen over and over and over again, so that when you're in a life-threatening situation, your instincts become good. Because our instincts are generally bad for using a gun or for how to fight or whatever it is. So you have to sharpen this blade over and over and over again. So when you go back to like your instinctual brain of I'm fighting for my life, then you can do it in the proper ways.
But another thing, there's not a lot of responsible gun owners that are going out and killing people. These are not
many at all. I mean,
no, it's these people who are possibly getting guns illegal, and they're going out and they're committing crimes. And I know for me, although I would never just go out and blatantly commit a crime, I'm not going to go out and do a crime with my registered gun. Like, these are responsible people who are going through background checks and doing all the right things. And I think we're really being held responsible for things that people who are breaking the laws, they're never going to abide by these laws. So you're making things stricter for us, but they're still going to have the ability to get these guns illegally. And then now they're going to have the guns, and you're trying to take our guns away so that we can't protect ourselves from these bad people.
Yeah, I listened to a podcast. I think the podcast was I think it was called like You're Not So Smart podcast, but they covered this psychological concept called the backfire effect, where if you have your mind made up and someone presents you with facts that counter it, that you'll actually become more solidified in your false narrative than acquire these new facts. And one of the ones that they used was guns, because people are so polarized on it. And they threw statistics out there. And this is like a very educational podcast where they vetted these facts very well. And one of them, it was like, I have them here. It's 100,000 Americans used a gun to prevent violence. And 90% of them never shot, just showed the gun. And then one of them, and then also 10 times more murders from kitchen knives and assault rifles. And then the other one that was really starting for me is 98% of gun crimes are done with stolen guns. So it goes back to what you said. So these stats are real, yet, it's people don't always, we're not data crunching machines, we're story machines. And the story of a school being shot up just resonates so much more than this data. And we have to try and understand that there's different ways we can solve these school shootings. No one wants school shootings. I talked to someone who's fascinating. I was talking to someone who's very, for gun control. And I said, no one is happy when school shootings happen and children are murdered. And they said, well, I think the gun companies are. You think they're happy that children are murdered? Come on. Yes, because it's their bottom line and they'll make more money. It's like how disillusioned are you to humanity? This isn't going to help us solve problems if you view the people you're trying to work with to solve problems in this way.
No, and a lot of people are just very uneducated when it comes to firearms. People will look at the firearm and go, guns killed such and such. Mm-hmm. A gun killed my brother, or a gun killed this person. A gun did not do that. A gun is just an object, right? So it's not the gun, it's the actual person. And that's who you really need to be upset with, because this gun is a tool that could have been easily done with a knife. It could have been easily done with anything. But, there's tons of car accidents, but they're not saying ban cars.
Yeah, or drug overdoses. That's a huge thing now. They might say ban, drugs, but a lot of them are done with prescription meds. So as much as people go after the NRA, I don't see nearly as much going after, big pharma, which has far, far more influence when dollar-wise and body-wise, like how many people, as far as lobbyists go, in Washington. And you might say well, because drugs help people. So do guns. I just read the statistics. So do guns. So there's a miss there. I think that where we should try to find is common ground between people that are, very anti-gun and people who are pro-gun. I think one of the things that we can all agree on is that gun laws should be enforced. Mm-hmm. And they're not. A lot of times they're not. There was a shooting. It's so unfortunate that I don't even know which one anymore because there's so many. There was one of them where the guy, I think he was military actually, and he had a dishonorable discharge and he had abuse, domestic violence on his record and stuff, and he still got a gun. And it's and people are calling for more gun laws. It's how can you can't do more gun laws if you're not enforcing the laws that we have. What good is that going to do? We need to enforce the laws and give law enforcement the ability to enforce the laws. And then once we can enforce the laws, then we know if they're good or bad or preventing this or preventing that, or if we need more. But we need to enforce the laws first. I think that you would agree with that.
Absolutely. And I think every now and then, pretty much with everything, there are times where things slip through the crack. And I think he was a slip through the crack. Mm-hmm. And not every agency talks to each other. And I think they're really working on that now. But there's things that are in place. And to go back what you said on, just the good stories aren't really getting out there. You don't hear about a lot of the saves. You don't hear about, but when there is a mass shooting, that is all over the place. But if someone comes in, and they try to shoot up a restaurant or they try to shoot up anything and a responsible gun owner stops it, they're not getting the airtime that they deserve. And so for me, I think it's huge that amongst people in the gun community that we're pushing those stories, because even if I can show a save to one person and convert them, then that's a win for me.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I'd never heard those stories. And then because of, this podcast and the way that my mind has become one where I'm I got to see all sides of these issues, is I started to follow more conservative news and more online Instagram pages and things like that. That's how I found you, for people that are pro-gun. And I started to see all these stories, and I always double check. I'm is that real? Is it fake news? And they're real, and it happens all the time. Would-be, mass shooter stopped, or, would-be, attacker inside the home stopped by responsible gun owner. over and over and over again. And it's like, oh, like this is part of the story too. It's like anything powerful. Money could be can go to do horrible things in society, or it could go to Bill Gates and he's curing malaria around the world. Like they're not these items, these powerful items are not evil or good just in themselves. It's how the people who hold those powerful things kind of wield them.
I agree.
I saw a picture of you that I liked. It was you have like a rifle that has like Wonder Woman like stuff on it. I thought it was kind of cool. And I want to talk about assault rifles. I don't know if you're aware of California law, but we had an assault weapons ban a couple of years ago. And when that went through, I was like, oh, I guess I won't see any more ARs and things like that at the gun store. But that's not what happened. They had to define what an assault weapon is. And people, when they say assault rifle ban and things like that, you have to, if you're going to make something illegal, you have to be very clear on what it is that's illegal. So I'm a school teacher. I can't say no disrespectful behavior. It needs to be very specific, because if it's loosey-goosey, then people can argue, well, that wasn't disrespectful, or I didn't intend it. So California defined it as long groove barrel, detachable magazine, shoulder stock, and pistol grip. So all the manufacturers did was they blended the grip into the stock. It's not a pistol grip anymore, and nothing got solved. And it's because the politicians didn't know about guns. They're legislating something they didn't understand. And the gun manufacturers said, well, we still believe that these guns should be out there, so we're going to make sure that they're out there. So yeah, like, what are your thoughts on like the assault rifle ban, or when someone says like, there's no reason, Avery, why you should have an AR-15 or, whatever, Ruger Mini 14 or whatever it might be. Like, there's no reason to have a semi-automatic rifle. Like, what would you, because that's something that I think people are going to be saying when they're listening to this. Like, why do you need that, Avery?
So guns are used for a lot of different things. Personal protection is only one of the things that guns are used for. There's a lot of people who hunt. They're not going to go out and hunt with their pistol. They're going to hunt with a rifle. And many people don't think about hunting when they think about guns or gun control. Some people are feeding their families just by hunting. They can't afford everything else, and they're going out and they're hunting. So that is a valid use for a rifle. There's different sports. And I really don't think that someone should say, well, what do I need it for? I may want to go out to the range and shoot. I may want to do plenty of things, or I could use that for home protection as well. It doesn't have to be just a pistol for home protection. It could be a rifle for home protection.
Yeah. Like, I guess, if there's certain parts of the country, if you're in a rural area, there's, response time for police is very long, and you hunt for your food and things like that. Like, well, that's a very different lifestyle than living in a high rise in LA or in Manhattan. Like, yeah, it doesn't coincide with your lifestyle at all. So of course you don't understand guns. You don't see the need for them because you don't have a need for them. So, I mean, that's like saying, why do you keep injecting yourself all the time of diabetes? Well, I don't inject myself all the time. Like, why? Like what? Like, because we have different needs and we have different ideas about how we're going to survive and thrive and things like that. And I think that's another big miss. Is, like you brought up, like people who don't understand hunting. I'm going to do a hunting podcast coming up. Like, but then, yeah, you don't understand. So maybe talk to a hunter, have the conversations like you and I are having, and try and figure this stuff out. But, an assault weapons ban, why do you need an AR? Even if you're going hunting, you could say, well, use a bolt action rifle, use a pump shotgun with a slug or something like that. Like, why do you need the AR just for fun, just because you want to go out and you want to shoot, targets and stuff like that? And then these assault weapons are going into schools and they're killing a whole bunch of people so much faster. The Vegas shooting, I think people go down that line of thinking. So I'm trying to represent that line of thinking so that we can try and educate and flush it out and try and figure it out on how to deal with that.
So I think these people are doing these crimes. Like, so in the schools, are they saying, okay, I have my choice between a pistol and a rifle? Are they doing that, or do they only have access to a rifle? Because you can get an extended magazine when it comes to your pistol. It's the person, it's not the gun. So they could do a lot of different things with a lot of different things. But regardless, it is a right, it is an option, and I shouldn't have to only defend myself with a pistol. If I want to defend myself with a rifle because I'm more comfortable with a rifle, I should have that opportunity. And some people are just not very comfortable with pistols. They're smaller, they may be harder for them to shoot. Maybe their hand strength really isn't there, and so it's easier for them to shoot a rifle. And if it's easier for them to shoot, then why can't they have it? And even for the people who don't live in the rural areas, or say they may live in New York, what if they do want to go hunting? Do they have to get a gun from someone else, rent a firearm? Yeah. Why can't they have their own?
So it actually, I never even thought of that. And I've thought about guns a lot, and I was raised around guns. I'm from Pennsylvania. And the idea that if you're holding a gun and maybe you're not that strong, then it could be less stable than if you can brace it up against your body like a rifle. That makes sense. Like, it's going to be more stable. More stable means more safe. Also, and I don't know if these statistics help, but school shooting statistics, the chances that you die in a school shooting is 1 in a million. It's 10 times more likely you'll be killed by a dog than in a school shooting, or that your child will be killed by a dog than a school shooting. So it's just so scary that the fear overwhelms sometimes like logic sometimes. And it just becomes this thing where you're just so scared. And like, I have kids, you have kids. The idea of them being in a school shooting is just horrifying. And you said that's even one of the things that motivated you, because this is such a scary idea. And I want to do a podcast later on mass shootings. But
another thing that I want to talk about is a lot of people don't talk about this, but the whole mental health side of it. There is a problem. And that's another part of the gun community that walk the talk. They are actually starting to bring those issues to light. And before it was, I don't really want to talk about those issues because they may be used against us, but it is a problem. And we need to talk about it so that we can help the problem and get the people who need the help. And we can take away this stigma from the guns are bad to, hey, we have people with issues that are using guns in a negative way. Let's get them help, and maybe we can help bring down the numbers for these crimes.
Yeah, that's such a whole different kind of can of worms. And I've gone into this, talking about this a lot on my Instagram, but also like in my classroom about, why are people doing these mass shootings? And it's so tricky, because when we say like, how can someone who's on the do not fly list get a gun? Well, because do you know how people get on that do not fly list? I know of someone who's a professional fighter named Muhammad Lawal who was on it because his name was Muhammad. If your cousin was there's no real like laid out specific formula to get on that do not fly list. It's just like suspected terrorism, but it's really loosey goosey. So you're going to take away a constitutional right for something like that. Flying is not a constitutional right, but the ability to protect yourself is. Even licenses, even the idea that like we should have a long permit process like you would for a car. There was a Supreme Court case, I don't know it off the top of my head, but there's a Supreme Court case that basically laid out that your natural rights, your rights laid out in the Constitution, you are not required to get a license for the rights required in the Constitution. Now that could be updated, but there is the idea of the process of getting a license even. Like, what if you were depressed as a teenager? Now for the rest of your life, you can't defend yourself. Like that, like what about, then the stigma is going to be, oh, I'm depressed, or I have anxiety, or I'm mentally ill. Now I'm a danger. Well, some of them are, but some of them aren't. And there's so many people that are not dangerous at all until they snap and shoot up places. So how do you know, unless we put a huge stigma on people that are suffering from mental illness, to say like, you're potentially dangerous? I'm like, but I've never hurt anybody. I'm suffering here and I still want to protect myself. Well, you can't handle this. It gets really tricky, I guess is the right word. I don't know. It gets really tough.
And I think that's why we need to get them help when they need it, right? Versus waiting until they're almost at that breaking point. Because just because you go and talk to a mental health professional does not mean that all your guns should be taken away, you know? And that's not normally how it happens either. There's different indicators or different things that may go on during that process. And it's like, okay, well, maybe we need to take all the guns out of the home and maybe we need to do this. But it's not automatic, hey, I'm going to go talk to a mental health professional and now my guns are taken away.
Yeah. Just to wrap it up, Avery, I think that this is probably should be the first of many conversations that people have. Maybe they're listening to this and they can start talking to people that think differently than them and things like that. But I do want to touch on the idea that, do you bring in the idea of race and gender into this at all? Because when I knew I was talking to you, I looked up some stuff too. And the statistics against Black women when it comes to sexual assault, domestic violence and stuff like that is higher. So does that play a role at all in do you play that identity, or do you just that's just not part of it, or is it part of it? Because there's another person that I follow on Instagram, Antonia Okafor, and she, talks about that element sometimes about how Black women are more at risk for this or that. And so how are we going to protect ourselves? Well, we protect ourselves with our concealed carry. So that, again, I'm just trying to flush out all of these different perspectives and see what your thoughts are on this.
So I do speak to that. I'm very huge on empowering women. Women, a lot of us we can never go hand to hand with a male. Although we want to say that we can sometimes, and
some women can, yeah, you're right.
But someone who has more strength than you, and like you said earlier, a firearm is the greatest equalizer. And sometimes when you pull it out, someone's just going to go the opposite way. They're not even going to engage. They're like, oh, never mind, because they don't expect for you to have one. I'm very, very huge on empowering women. And a lot of women, once they find out how to defend themselves and they're able to properly handle a firearm, they just feel so empowered and they're self-confident. So even if they've been through domestic violence issues and they just have all of these different issues, maybe they were previously raped or whatever it may be, that empowers them to feel like they can protect themselves and get out of I'm not going to say the victim mindset, but don't look at themselves as a victim anymore and just know that they can protect themselves. And, you said some statistics about Black women, but I look at it as not only Black women, but I know Black women can relate to me. I want women to look at me and say, oh man, if Skip can do it, then I can do it. And so I have women that look at my pictures. And for the longest, it was so hard for me to post pictures of myself. And, the internet's so crucial these days. And I just knew if they saw me and saw that I could handle a rifle or that I could shoot a pistol, that they would know that they can do it, because I'm average. I'm nothing special, but I've been on a journey and I've trained for years. And I've had people say, oh, I want to be just like you. And I'm like, I'm nothing special. I was just like the average person. I didn't have any knowledge of firearms, but I realized that it was a skill that could really benefit me. And once I took it on as a challenge, and to see where I came from 10 years ago, I know that if I can do that, any woman in America can do it. And we can turn those statistics around to where we're being proactive and we're not being victims. And those people who are close to us, who are hurting us, they'll know, okay, maybe she does know how to protect herself, because a lot of them think that we don't know how to protect ourselves, or we have a gun in our home, but that person that's coming in our home and hurting us, they don't know. And when we pull it out, we can protect ourselves. So women, Black women, I don't really speak of color a lot, because I think that is something that a lot of the time is used to separate us. And I'm not about separating anyone. I'm about bringing us together. So if you're white, you can relate to me because I'm a woman and I'm a mother. And if you're Black, you can relate to me as well. And the only time they're going to see my color is when they see me, you know, if they hear me, they may not know that I'm a Black woman, but I want to encourage all women. And it's not just about women, it's just about being a responsible gun owner. And a lot of the times people feel like minorities are left out. So I'm here and I want them to know, hey, I'm a minority as well. And I get it maybe because my husband is Caucasian. So he grew up and he was very familiar with firearms. I grew up and I didn't know anything about firearms until I entered the military. And I entered the military at 17. And they don't give you a lot of extensive knowledge on it. It's, hey, here's the basics. This is how you operate it, and I need you to qualify on it. And it's not something that if you go to a class for 5 to 8 hours, you're not going to be an expert. If you do not work on that skill continuously, a year or two later, when you touch it again, you're not going to be an expert. So for someone like me who didn't own any firearms personally, it was only through the military, I saw that as a weakness. And as a mother, that was just something that I had to get smart on and I had to work on. And all these people who don't think that they can do it, I'm here to tell them that they can do it. And it is your right to protect yourself, and you should protect yourself, and you should be able to protect those around you as well. I'm huge on protecting other people. It is, I mean, as a service member, I've taken that on as my job to protect people who live in the United States. That is what I want to do. But I want, if there's someone who's at the gas station and they see someone's getting assaulted, for them to step up and help them as well. And there's a lot of people who say that they will not do that for the next person. And I turn that and say, okay, if you're not willing to do that for the next person, would you want the next person to do that for you? Or would you want the next person to do that for your wife or your child? And it's just about being a responsible gun owner. And it's not all about guns. I want people to be aware of their surroundings, so maybe they can avoid these situations before they happen. I talk about just if you're somewhere and there's someone with a black trench coat doesn't have to be black, but a trench coat and it's like 90 degrees outside. What's under that trench coat? Why are they acting so suspicious? Maybe I need to remove myself from the situation. Or the mall shootings that we had here over the holidays. There's people who are arguing. It's starting to get loud. I'm going to remove myself from that situation because it's probably going to get ugly. And I can remove myself and I can call the cops. I can remove myself and do anything. But you need to be aware of your surroundings. If there's someone who's walking behind me and it's dark, okay, maybe I want to get my keys out. Maybe if I don't have a gun, maybe I want to get on the phone with someone and let them know, hey, I'm in this parking lot and I'm really feeling uncomfortable. If something happens to me or if you hear me scream, can you call 911 or can you call someone for me? We need to get aware of our surroundings. And a lot of people are just really focused on technology. They're not aware. They're walking and talking on their cell phones or they're walking and texting. And not everybody needs a gun, but everybody needs to be aware of their surroundings.
Yeah, there's so much there that I agree with. I mean, I love the fact that you say that you're average, first of all, because then that makes it like possible for everyone. Like you're not just some super commando that was just bred and all of a sudden that's the way you are. Like this is a skill that you worked at, which I think is awesome. I also couldn't agree more about like the focus on race. You know, and I wanted to bring you on here and bring that up just because I want everyone to believe that, you know, responsible gun ownership or people who are quote unquote gun people can look any way. They don't just, I'm trying to break these like stereotypes.
Oh yeah.
But I couldn't agree more about like, let's not focus on that kind of stuff for yourself or for other people. And then lastly, the responsibility part. I mean, I promote responsibility for yourself and others as maybe my number one like thing to teach, because, you know, it's so easy in modern society to give up responsibility of working hard. You don't need to work hard anymore. You live very comfortably. And, you know, how are you going to make the world a better place? Not mandate that someone else does it, which is what the police would be. It's like mandating you protect me. It's like protect yourself. You know, you go clean up the pollution. No, go out and clean up the park with your kids or something like that. Like you go out and you take on that responsibility and for yourself and others. And I know that if my kids were at the mall and I knew that you were there, Avery. Like if I knew you were there, I would feel better. I would not feel better if someone I didn't know, some random person was there with a gun, but someone who is responsible and active military and blah, 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 and like and teaches this stuff, I would feel better. And I think that's, if we can all do that as a society, that's a really great thing. So just because I've been on for almost an hour, I want to wrap this up so I don't steal all of your day. But I really think that the more that, if you don't understand this, if this podcast still just like didn't resonate with you and you still are like, no, I still don't think so, be willing to get uncomfortable, because you have to take on like learning that there are good, responsible people that think differently than you on everything, on whatever it is. This just happens to be guns, but you don't have to go out. Like you said, you're not advocating that everyone goes out and gets a gun. But you have to, if you're going to have strong opinions, you're going to push for certain legislation, or you're going to, think certain ways or think negatively about certain people. Like, try to immerse yourself in that world a little bit. And you say, well, that's uncomfortable. I don't like guns. They're scary. I know what that might be like. And maybe you did too, because you weren't raised around guns, but that's the only way you grow. That's the only way you learn.
And so something that I do want to say about that is when people say, they're scared of guns, or, guns are this or that, I like that. That means that they actually have a respect for the firearm and they know the power of the firearm. So from that, I can educate you on why you shouldn't be scared. This is just an object, and I'll take someone, and I'll give them a cleared out gun and I'll say, hey, this is just an object. This is not going to do anything unless I place this in your hand. And they have to understand the mechanics of it as well. This gun will not go off by itself. I don't care how many people say that these things go off by themselves. They don't, There's things that have to happen in order for this to go off. So you don't have to be scared. But another thing that I want to say that I don't think I said before is I am not a gun nut. I am not. There's a lot of people out there who are gun nuts, but what I am is I am someone who knows the necessity of a firearm.
How would you define a gun nut? Sorry, but what would that?
Oh my God, all the gun nuts are about to come after me.
I know they might. They might be like, they might think you're like far too like liberal or far too like, yeah.
So when it comes to gun nuts, some people think of gun nuts as people who just have to buy all the guns and, they need all the Gucci equipment and it's just guns. My life doesn't revolve around guns.
One part of it. Yeah. Yeah. Like their personality, their fundamental part of the personality is guns.
Yeah. And so, for me, it's sometimes I'd rather spend my money on something else than a gun. I know the need for it. And for me, it's such a pivotal skill for me that I make sure that I go to the range often. So I do spend a lot of money on ammo. I spend money on making sure that I have the appropriate equipment. But the reason why I say that I'm not a gun nut is because more people can relate to me not being a gun nut. I want them to know, like I said, I'm average. Like I am just like everyone else. But just like you have a skill as a teacher, I have a skill as a firearms instructor. And as an instructor, I just feel like it's my duty to get out there and teach people. So when they see that I'm a firearms instructor, they may think, oh, she's a gun nut. Or if I post pictures of gun, oh, she's a gun nut. I'm absolutely not a gun nut. I'm just someone who has a skill and I decided to share it with the world.
Yeah. I mean, how are you supposed to make the world a better place? If that's the reason why we're in this simulation, whatever life is, like you make the world a better place by using your skills. And you're in the military and you're a firearms instructor in the military. That's your skill. I'm a teacher. So I'm creating this podcast. Like you use your skill. If you're a plumber, then you go out and you make pipes to clean up, Flint, Michigan or something. Like you use whatever skill you have. When you said about how, people who have a respect for guns. I've told students who are upset about like police shootings, and I say, you should become a police officer. And they say, no, I don't want to shoot anybody. And I was like, that's exactly why you should be a cop. It's because you don't want to shoot people. That's right. And that kind of is in line with what you say. Like, I'm scared of guns. Yes. Okay. Yes. Because they're powerful. You respect them. And then you will only use it when you need to. And you're not going to become a gun nut and want to just shoot in the backyard or celebrate the New Year or something.
And I'm actually, I'm trying to find a way to get into schools because When it comes to guns and people who are older, a lot of people are set in their ways. And the older that people get, they're not really going to change the way that they think, regardless of how many facts we talk about, regardless of how many stories that we put out there. They're not going to change their ways. But I want to really educate the younger children on firearms, and they're going to grow up with a respect for them, and they're going to learn the right way. They're not going to learn by listening to a rap song. They're not going to learn by watching, because my kids play video games. When it comes to Call of Duty and all those games, that doesn't give you a respect for a gun. It teaches you that you can shoot something and you may have 5 respawns left, right? But that person's going to come back to life. But in real life, when you point a gun at someone and you shoot them, there's no do-over. There's no, oh, we're going to get a respawn. And I really want to educate children on making good decisions. And we have, kids that are in some of these really bad communities, and they're not getting educated. And the education that they're getting on guns are the people on the corner who are doing the bad things. And so I want to teach them there's other ways around this. And I want to teach you about guns. And I don't want you to make these bad decisions, because if you make these bad decisions, then you're going to lose some of your rights. So as a felon and they can't own a firearm, I feel like not having a right to own a gun is huge. Like, you can never protect yourself or your family with a firearm. So talking to these kids and educating them on having a healthy respect for a firearm and what to do and what not to do, I think will really hit home with them. And a lot of them are going to learn it from someone who may look like them. And they're like, oh man, if she can do it, then I can do it.
Yeah. So my target audience for this and my Instagram and for everything that I'm kind of building now outside of the classroom is high school students or young adults, 15 to 25, and high school teachers. So, I hope that people, look you up. So just to close out, like, where can people find you, Avery? Like, because I love the idea of you just educating. And again, people don't have to agree with you, but they should hear you. They don't have to agree with anything on the other side or whatever it is, but like, listen to it and like take it seriously, and then add this new data to your understanding of this issue or the world. And then you have to like reconcile these two different things and like, okay, well, maybe I'm not as sure as I thought I was. That's okay. That's good. So anyway, sorry, where do we find it? Yeah.
We need a healthy debate, Yeah. I see that a lot of people are debating nowadays, and it's just name calling, and that's not the way that you debate. When you debate, you speak your facts, and then you just sometimes have to agree to disagree, but then you just respect the other person. But they can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Skips Tactical Solutions. I also have a YouTube page and a Twitter as well. And my website is skipstacticalsolutions.com. Oh, and sorry, I have a podcast, which is Skips Tactical Solutions.
Perfect. So look that up. I'll put, when I release this, I'll put it in like the notes and stuff like that too. So Avery, thank you very much. I really appreciate you calling me and us being able to talk about this. And I hope that people learn something. That's the point of this podcast. So thank you.
Thank you for doing what you're doing and taking on the role to educate the younger individuals on all of these issues.
Yeah. All right. Take care.
Thank you.